How you doing, guys? So in this video I'll be showing you how I master my own tracks to play them out live. I'll be using a couple of Ableton stock plugins and a couple of third-party plugins. I'll leave a link in the box. So let's get into it. So here's a 4-bar loop of our track which we want to master, which I've broken down into 5 main elements: the kick, the bass, the percussion, vocals and synths. And most importantly, we'll be referencing our track with a commercially released track, which is our track here in blue. That will be of the same genre and a track that you know sounds good. So let's listen to our track as it sounds at the moment. And let's go ahead and listen to our reference track to see where we want to get to. So you see there's quite a lot of work to be done. It's a lot louder and the levels sound much more even. So let's go ahead and get to work on our track. Firstly, to start with the kick. So for the kick, I've thrown on a couple of plugins, Utility and Spectrum. These are Ableton stock plugins. So let me solo the kick. Now with the Spectrum, you can see the level here, which is down at around -20. We want to get that up to just over -12 dB, around 11. So I want to push up the gain on the Utility until we get to around -11. So that sounds about right. And we want to do the same for the bass. I'm going to solo the bass. So I'm going to push up the gain until we're just under -12, maybe around -13 dB. That sounds about right. So I want to solo the kick and the bass to see how they sound. Next, we're going to bring up the percussion so it fits in nicely with the kick and the bass. So let's start off with the first loop here. And you want to push these up until they sound about right to your ears. We're going to reference it in a minute. And let's go for our second loop. So that sounds about right to me, but let's just reference it to our track to see where we stand. Now, to make this a fair reference, we want to make sure our track is sitting at around the same level on our Spectrum. So we're going to load in Utility and Spectrum on our reference track here and make sure that it's peaking just at around -12, -11 dB. And this is in the bass. So I'm going to loop around the last 4 beats of our track and the first 4 beats of our reference track. Sounds about right to me. So what I did there was just tweak the level of the percussion until it sounds about level with our reference track. So next I'm going to move on to the vocals and synths and just adjust the volume until they sound about right. That's about right. And the synths. Sounds about right. So let's just compare to our reference track. Maybe I'll push the hats up just a little bit more. Okay, so that sounds about right. Now we want to master the entire thing. And for that, we want to get it as loud as we can without distortion. So for that, I'm going to use some third-party plugins. So first, let me group our tracks here. So Control G. So all our tracks are running through this group here. And I'm going to bring in our third-party plugins. So our first plug-in is UAD Pultec, and this is going to give us some bass boost here, and I've also put some boost around 12 kilohertz. So let's just see what's going on here. I'm going to boost the bass here and attenuate it at the same time. So what I want to make sure is that we don't go too far above the minus 12 dB on our spectrum here. So you can see it's just slightly over, so I'm going to attenuate it just a little bit more. That sounds about right. And you can see I've already boosted the top end around 12 kilohertz and attenuated that as well. If I take that off, just gives it a nice little shimmer in that top end. So let's just compare it with and without. Off. This sounds a bit fuller. I might take down that top end just a bit more. Okay, and now we want to move on to our second plugin, which is the UAD 1176. So for this, I want to get to a gain reduction of around minus 3 dB. So I'm going to push the input until we get to a minus 3 dB gain. And the output I'm going to change until we get to a minus 11 dB output on our spectrum. And let's do a quick A/B comparison. Off. Just gives it a bit more punch and a bit more volume. And the last plugin is a limiter, and that is to push the volume of everything up until we're at around between minus 6 and minus 4 dB. So for that, we're using the FabFilter Pro L2. So I'm going to push up the gain until we start to hover around between minus 6 and minus 4 dB on the bass. If you push it too much above minus 6, you're going to start to get distortion, and we don't want that. So just be very careful. Minus 4 at the very most, but between minus 6, minus 4. That sounds about right to me. And then we can do a final comparison with our master. So to make it fair, we're going to push up the gain on our reference track till it's around the same, minus 6 to minus 4 dB. Most commercially released tracks will be at around that to start, so you won't need to mess around with the gain. So let me check that now. There we go. So let's compare ours with the reference track. So you can see I pushed up the volume of my kick just a little bit when comparing to our reference track, but the kicks are different, which is why this one may sound a little bit louder, but ours will sound as weighty and punchy. So that is how I master my tracks before I play them out. So I hope that helped you out. I'll see you in the next one.